Awesome. So, welcome back to the Breaking Bread Village. I want to welcome our guest today, Jazz. Jazz, go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we will get started with the conversation.
All right. My name is Jazz. I go by they, them pronouns. I work for Live Oak Coffee House. I'm their operations director, so I help with a lot of different things. I also am a local artist here in Midlands, hoping to branch out this summer, and it's pretty much all the things.
Awesome. I mean, you do way more than that, but you are being modest, so I will respect that and let you be modest because I could go on about the things that you do and who you are. So, Jazz, today we are here to talk, and I'm really excited to have this conversation because I think that just like myself, there are plenty of people that have questions, right? We talk about, the trans community, when we talk about the LGBTQ plus community, like it's a lot of questions, right? Yeah. Especially, and I've shared this with you. I've been very open and transparent about the fact that I grew up in a Christian home, and all we learned and when I say home, I mean like the whole environment of my life, the culture, right? Because I grew up in, we spent most of our time in church, right? Yeah. So not just in my home, but just my whole upbringing, right? Yeah. Was very Christian based. And, we learned that it's just not right. Yeah. That was it. That was the end of it. It was not right. You're going to hell, for sure. Period. Right. So there was not a lot of answers to questions. And I was a very inquisitive child. So I always had questions, right? And so anyway, because it's not about me, it's about you. We're going to talk, but I'm glad that we're having this conversation because people need to be transparent on both sides of this, right? Ask questions. Sure, for sure. So tell me, like, because you didn't always consider yourself trans, right?
Right.
So tell me, as a young child, tell me about a young Jasmine. Tell me kind of, how you felt as a child, if you knew when you were a child that something was what we call different, right? Yeah.
I always knew I was a little different. I didn't really know what it was. There was like small conversations between me and other kids about if I were to like girls, who would it be, and very innocent conversations. But I grew up in a Catholic household. I went to Catholic school until I was about eighth grade. So childhood all the way to eighth grade, I was in Catholic school. So definitely was like a no to anything that had to do with something different than just like norm. And then I went to a regular public high school, and I think that I was really ashamed of my own, what I was feeling on the inside.
Yeah.
Because I definitely had like my first girl crush when I was like in second grade. Mm-hmm. And then she went off to a different school. So then I just ignored any feelings that I had.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Up until that point. And then she ended up in one of my classes when I got into high school, and I still was very much like, I was one of those people that denied to the point where I was kind of mean to people in the LGBTQ community, which is, I had to apologize for later.
Sure. Okay. Sure.
And I really identified as like bisexual when I first came out, mostly because I think I was very afraid of it all.
Sure.
And also I didn't want to deny love wherever it would come from. Sure. And then when I moved out of my parents' house, I went in the complete opposite direction of what they wanted. I started going by a different name, and not for the trans aspect, but just because I didn't want to be who they wanted me to be.
Sure. Yeah.
And I cut all my hair off. It was super liberating. And the trans thought process was not, and I'm going to say this very gently, but not as mainstream as it is now. Like,
no, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
People are open to being who they are now. And I think that's such a beautiful thing. But 10 or 15 years ago, we were barely okay to just say that we were gay. Like there were still people that would have some sort of bias towards you for being gay. And there is still that now, but not as much. And now our trans community is definitely feeling that same oppression that we felt like 10 years ago as just being gay, and then even worse 20 years ago for just being gay. Mm-hmm. So when I worked, when I worked at McDonald's, when you and I first met,
Yeah,
I was going
years
by Ryan.
ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going by Ryan. I did strap my chest down and wear a tie, and I don't know that was necessarily like trans specific, but definitely like androgynous and non-binary, which we didn't have vocabulary for that really like taught to us 10 or 15 years ago.
Sure.
And then
how was that though? Before you go, how was that strapping, your breast? Because I mean, I know even like during like our menstrual, right? The time of the month, our breasts are so sensitive. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I always wondered, but like again, when you ask questions, you never want to be offensive.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm just very curious, like how was that?
It's very painful and it's very dangerous.
Oh, okay.
So because as someone who has not a small chest,
sure.
You have to wrap a lot in order for it to look anything like what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And the way ace bandages work, they're made to contract.
Right.
So every time you would breathe,
it
would just contract more. And if it was hot, so if you picture working at McDonald's in the grill area where it's super hot, like you're already dehydrated because you're back there, and then it's extra hot because you have this compression happening on your chest.
Yeah.
So very dangerous, I would say. I'm grateful that now there are more breathable materials and people are being more serious about coming out with different things that you can order.
Sure.
I do wish that there were more things in stores, especially in a more conservative town. It's harder and harder to find.
Yeah.
But you can order things on the internet, which, depending on your economic background and where you're at, could be totally out of the ballpark still.
Yeah.
So right now, I just do like a really tight sports bra, but it's still
kind of uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But
I would say as far as like my dysphoria, and I've had a lot of conversations recently about this with some of my friends, like I think I still don't know 100% if full transition is what is going to happen.
Have you thought about that?
I've thought about it a lot. A lot more recently.
Yeah.
I know that I don't necessarily fit into the societal box of what it means to be a female.
Okay. Yeah. What people say. Yeah.
What people say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when like the way that I look in my brain is definitely not the way that I look on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And when I like go to the store and pick out clothes, I imagine like what it's going to look like, but I have to buy clothes that are like a little bit bigger than where I usually like to buy clothes in order for it to all be hidden.
Right.
So,
right.
So for the passing of being non-conforming.
Yeah.
Did that answer the question?
No, it did. I just always have been curious about that, like if it was comfortable or not. So tell me, Jazz, because I want to go back to childhood, right? Okay. I want to really talk about that because, there's always this question that people have, right? Where they say, well, nobody, some people say you choose this.
Yeah.
Some people say, at a young age.
Yeah.
You're saying you knew at a young age that something was different.
Yeah.
Right? The way that society said, hey, you should be this. Yeah. You're like, wait a minute, I'm over here. Yeah. I want to go this direction. Yeah. What struggles did you go through with that? Like, I mean, as far as like from family or from that feeling of having to be in that box that people said you should be in.
So I remember when I had to get my first training bra and I like was so mad about it.
Yeah.
And then like the kids on the street would make fun of me because I had this sports bra and I couldn't just wear like my whatever spaghetti strap tank tops anymore because then I had this sports bra, this training
bra. Did you have larger breasts as a young child? I mean,
okay. The development of a child,
right.
You could tell.
Right.
There was something going to happen.
Right.
So I definitely, that was really hard to kind of be with your friends as you once were. And then now you're like developing in different ways.
Yeah.
And then I grew up as a tomboy. So I'd always wear like t-shirts and jeans, and going to a Catholic school, you have to wear jumpers and like skirts and stuff on like special days of the week, you know, for church.
Yeah.
And I could never just wear shorts for those days. You had to wear.
Yeah, I went to Catholic school, so I know. Yes. Yeah, for mass or for
for mass. Which I think, I don't know. I think that I never really liked wearing dresses unless it was something really fancy. Yeah. And even then, I really would have preferred to wear a pair of slacks. And it was a hard conversation growing up, pretty much when I was like 10 or 11. And I definitely knew I didn't want to wear dresses anymore. It was a hard conversation between me and my mom because I didn't know how to tell her. Like, not that my mom would be mad that I want to wear jeans instead of a dress.
Right, right. But it was deeper for you that she didn't realize.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't think I realized either as far as like the trans situation. I just thought it was just like I was a tomboy, and
see, I was a tomboy too growing up, right? I was very much into like running around and with the boys. Yeah, those were all my good friends, and I was very athletic. Yeah. And I didn't like wearing dresses. I despised it. My mom and my mother, she was a sewer, and she loved to like make these frilly dresses with like hair bows to match. And I'm like, get this off of me. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I just so you went through that as a child where you kind of, you know, just knew something was different, and you knew something was there that you couldn't put words to. Yeah. So at what age did you start to realize, did you find the words? At what age did you find those words, you know?
So when I started working at Disneyland, and I got to work around other people of my community,
sure.
It's like they made it safe to be different. Right. And then they obviously already have all their own language, which helps a lot. And I was able to get into a different perspective. So I went to Catholic school, same humans, all the way till 8th grade. And then I went straight into high school, where being gay was still very stigmatized, like in the early 2000s. So obviously we never had to deal with that, or I chose not to be a part of it, you know? And even to the point of like pointing my finger at them also. And then moving into this space of like freedom with these people who've never met you before. And you get to meet like normal human beings who happen to be gay. Yeah. And that's when I really was like, okay, well, I kind of want to know what this is about.
Sure.
And then I met this woman I was only like 17. And working for Disney and working with like 21, 22-year-olds. And I met this woman, I won't name her, but I thought she was so beautiful. Yeah. And I could not cheese out around her.
I see you already are, right? Thinking about yeah.
And she said that, you know, she was flattered by that, but I was super young, you know.
Right.
Which is totally understandable. But it was the first time that I actually like leaned into this idea that I liked girls.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And then I had my first girlfriend that summer. Okay. And everything was just like a secret. Like I wasn't gonna say anything, you know. I had kissed my first girl, and it was like super eye-opening to any of the guys I had ever been with in the past. And very, very apparent that it's very different than being with men, which I realized in the vocabulary, I guess, that I had from like being with men and then like starting to date women. Yeah. It was just like for one, it wasn't just like this physical component. It was like actual depth of enjoying somebody's company because of their brain and their heart, and not just like, we're going to get down to business.
Right, you know? right.
And
get down to business. Right.
You know, and I didn't really like lose any of my virginities, I guess, until I was like 18, which doesn't really matter when, but I was very sheltered growing up.
Sure.
So I never experienced anything until I was 18 or 19 years old. And at that age, like some of us have already discovered so much about ourselves.
Yeah. So yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
For
yeah.
me,
Yeah.
I knew that I liked art, and I knew that I liked sports.
Yeah.
And that's basically it.
Yeah.
And then coming into this realm of like, okay, I know that I like boys, but maybe I only like boys because I'm supposed to like boys.
That's when you started questioning a little bit more.
Like,
yeah.
Maybe I like boys because I'm supposed to like boys, and maybe I like boys because I actually kind of want to look like them, but not actually want to like
be with them.
Yeah, you know,
boys are icky. Yeah, yeah. No, I get that. Yeah,
and I think that for a while I would have decided to just be with a boy to appease the social construct of.
That is so interesting to me. I mean, I think that at some point in most of our lives we've conformed, right? I mean, and not just sexually, I'm just saying period, right? Where we like, oh well, I'll go ahead and be an engineer because my family wants me to be an engineer, even though I want to be an artist, right? But I always, this is a different level of that, right? Because you are kind of really suppressing a part of you that you don't feel comfortable or safe to let out. So I just always think about that, you know. So tell me, because I want to get into when you started to feel like you were in the trans aspect of it. Yes. Like when did that kind of come to fruition for you?
I think I am still in the discovering phase of that.
Gotcha.
I met so you meet new people every day, you know.
Sure.
And I met someone recently, well, at least in the past 6 years, who came into Live Oak, and when I first met him, I was like, this gay guy who's coming in here. Then I realized that he was in transition, so he was transitioning from female to male.
Yeah.
And we had like really deep conversations right there in Live Oak, and it was early days, so it was quiet, you know. We're just like whispering back and forth. And he looked at me, he's like, after our like conversation about our like realities of things we have in common.
Yeah.
Things not just about like how we feel when we wear our clothes, but roles we choose to take in relationships, and and ways we grew up, and how we didn't want to conform to that like woman in the kitchen role. We wanted to be outside, like mowing the lawn and like these kinds of things. And a lot deeper things than that too. And he was just like, you should really think about like where you're actually at. Like, are you sure that you're just a lesbian, like a super lesbian, you know?
Right.
And I was like, no, man, I know for sure. And I think when I've learned a lot about myself now that I'm 33, and one big thing I know is that when I'm afraid of something, I deny it till like the cows come home. I'm just like, no, that's not for me.
Yeah. Because it's change. Yeah.
But then like things change, and you start to kind of pay attention a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I know that it's definitely not just I don't even know how to talk about it. It scares me because I know it's super different than what society norm, and it's like another layer of difference than somebody else. Right?
Yeah.
I just came out to my parents recently about it, and
okay, because last time we talked, you had not yet. So how did that go?
It was hard. I think it was harder that I wasn't in the same area as them, so I did it like over the phone.
Oh yes, because when you do it in person, you get that extra, sensory of like, close proximity for you to be able to hug them, or you can see expressions a little bit better and feel.
So it was really hard, but I couldn't hold on to it anymore. And I also was starting to really think about going to this trans group in Mount Pleasant, where they like a group therapy pretty much.
Sure.
to start talking to people who are also experiencing the same thoughts that I am experiencing.
Yeah.
I haven't gone yet because I'm really nervous about it. I feel like sometimes I feel like things are so set in stone, and I think that's a big thing throughout all of your identity discovery is like you find out one small thing about yourself and you feel like that's going to be you forever.
Oh yeah.
And with the complexity of discovering that you are not exactly the box female.
Yeah.
Is that there's like hormonal things involved where you can take testosterone to change your hormonal output, which changes your entire body, which is a huge like.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
Like, because okay, so me being me, I'm very inquisitive, so I try to read and look at documentaries and all this stuff to learn, right? Sure. And so I know that when a male transitions into a female, I know that surgery process. What does that look like for a female transitioning to a male? What does that look like?
I don't know a lot about the process of
like the genitalia area.
I've read a lot of like scary things.
Yeah.
But I don't know the full process and the full scope of it. I'm sure that it's a lot of like, I don't even know. It looks and sounds very painful.
Yeah. Because even the opposite, because I want to make sure I'm saying this right, a male becoming female. Yeah. I've seen videos of like what they have to do to keep that hole open.
Yeah.
Right. Where the vagina. Yeah. And it just seems really uncomfortable. So I guess my question to you is, can a person consider themselves or be trans without doing the surgery? Yeah, okay.
For sure. I think you don't necessarily need to have top surgery either way, right? You don't need to have top surgery. You don't need to have bottom surgery.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And excuse me for anybody listening and to you if I sound ignorant, because I am, right? I'm ignorant about this. So I like asking questions. Yeah.
I wouldn't say that I could speak for all of the trans community.
Sure, of course. Well, just like I can't speak for all Black people. I mean, just
I think that trans essentially is dysphoria, right? Gender dysphoria of some sort.
Yeah.
I think I've met people who have a lot of like body dysmorphia about like just their chest. So then they got top surgery and now they feel fine.
Yeah.
Like the testosterone was not for them.
Yeah.
You know, and I know people that are trans who go all the way and are looking into getting top surgery, like male transitioning to female. So are looking to getting top surgery, and she feels more like herself than she ever has.
Right.
You know, I think it's how can we move and go through this life in the most genuine, authentic versions of ourselves.
Sure.
And what does that look like?
Yeah.
So for me right now, I've thought a lot about top surgery recently.
Okay.
And looked into what that looks like as far as like what does insurance cover?
Sure.
What doesn't it cover? And how much that costs. And then a lot of the questions I've been asked is once you get top surgery, is that going to be enough for you? Or do you think that you're going to need to go through like testosterone and all of this stuff, which to be completely fair, freaks me out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've heard.
Why does it freak you out?
I'm a very emotional person already.
Yeah.
So for two things.
Yeah.
I'm a very emotional person already, and I get really nervous about what the effects testosterone will do to my ability to handle my emotions.
Sure. Yeah.
So there's like stories and stuff out there, and obviously my scope is limited, and I hope that kids that are learning about this later in life will have more information.
Sure.
So that they don't have to be so afraid of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for my limited knowledge, it's like when boys are going through puberty.
Yeah.
And they have to learn how to cope and handle their like aggression and emotional. outbursts, I don't know, the things that boys have to deal with.
Yeah, that impulsivity and all that stuff.
They
Yeah.
grow into like being able to cope and learn how to handle it
Right.
over time.
Right.
For me to introduce testosterone to my body at the age of 33.
Yeah. Yeah.
I get really nervous about the anger and the aggression outbursts that could possibly happen.
Yeah. I'm glad that you're being honest about this, because I think these are real questions, right?
Yeah.
And real I hate to use the word concerns, but it is, right? Yeah. And so I think that sometimes on either side of this conversation, people are so extreme, and it's like we have to there's some gray area, right? There's some gray area. For me personally, I have, like, people, live your life, right? Please live your life, you know? The only questions I have really is when it comes to younger people, like when they're children, right? I always wonder, like you said, being informed, to be able to make an informed decision. And so I wonder, and that's why I asked the question about being a child, because my question is always, as children, when you make life altering decisions, that scares me sometimes. And it's just because as a child, like, I mean, it was so many different things that went through my brain. And then when I turned 20, it was like, oh, I changed. Not that it was wrong or right. It just was different, right? And so I always wonder about, you know, like surgeries and different things like that, introducing things at such a young age, that worries me sometimes, just because I don't have enough information on how a child can make such a big decision. I get
decision.
Yeah, I get worried about children making a decision on what parent they want to live with through a divorce. Because they don't. Sometimes it's the parent that gets all the gifts, right? Yeah. You buy me, you take me to Disneyland, so I want to be, you know. So it's just, and that may not be the best parent, right? Yeah. So does that make sense?
Yeah. It scares me too. I think if I think back to my McDonald's days,
sure,
and I'm sure. Like, I can't say that I never thought about the trans possibility, because I definitely thought about it sometimes. But I also know that fast forward 5 years after that, I was grateful that I didn't do anything rash. And that's because at that point in my life, my ex-wife and I were talking about having kids. Right. So then it was like, she didn't want to carry the baby. And I always kind of wanted to carry, which is also the confusing part. Yeah. So I was glad I didn't do anything rash back then, because now, we were going to move into this space of like possibly having kids, and then me carry, and I would need you don't need all of your parts, you don't need to have breasts to have babies, but, if all of your organs are correct on the inside. But that was the experience that I wanted when I thought about having kids, was like the full scope of being able to feed my child and nourish my child from my own body.
Right. Right.
And now on the other side of even that, like, 33, I'm not getting any younger, for one, as far as like your body. Yeah. And for two, I think that, we change our minds so often as just adults. Yeah. And not to say that kids shouldn't have the option to be the most genuine versions of themselves. Sure. But I do think that more conversation should be had around it, for anybody who's making a huge, like, body altering, life altering decision. Yeah. And this is not even about just, trans, communication and dialogue. It's everything. Yeah. At 5 years old, I just think about the things that I said at 5. Yeah. And I think about when you make major decisions. Yeah. Because I also look at the other side of this, right? I watch videos of people who regret they did it, right? Yeah. Where they I saw one the other day where a trans woman wanted to sue her parents and the therapist, because she felt like they didn't advocate for her because they did what she wanted them to do at that young age. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's just so many parts to it that like make my brain go, wow, this is it's super complex.
Yeah.
It's super complex. And I don't know that we'll ever really find the right answer
Sure.
because it's so individualized to the
Yes.
person.
Yeah.
Know?
Yeah.
And for me and my experiences, I'm glad I didn't do anything rash over this expanse of time.
Sure.
But now I'm reaching a point where I know right now in my life, that this would make me the most happy and feel the most genuine of myself.
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm gonna, do testosterone in a few years, or all of this other stuff that goes along with it. And because the process of getting top surgery or any kind of gender reassignment surgery is such a lengthy process, also gives like time, right? Like, it's important that we take our time with the decisions that we make.
I mean, across the span, our life,
the span of life. And I think we're so in a hurry to have that instant gratification, that we don't give ourselves time to just like take a breath and assess.
In a process.
Because it is, I mean, everything is a big decision, really.
I mean, for sure. For sure. And that's the part where it's like I think we can be honest about that. Mm-hmm. That it is a big decision. Like, and we make big decisions all the time in our life. And it does make sense to just pause, right? And just take it in. So I want to go back to the question that you said they asked you. Do you think that'll be enough? Like, you're in kind of in this self-discovery, where you've been really actively searching within, right? And digging deep to see like, who is Jazz? Who is Ryan, right? Who am I, right? Do you think it would be enough if you were to take testosterone, change, different parts of your genitalia, remove your breast? Do you think that you will find happiness within self?
I think that happiness within yourself is way more than just what you look like in the mirror. I think that I have a lot more work to do on my own spiritual journey and my own discovery of what it means like to be me as a spirited human. Versus what I look like in the mirror. I think that if my outsides matched my insides, then it would be easier, maybe. But at the end of the day, even if I woke up tomorrow, and I looked exactly like I look like in my brain, which is a bomb ass beard, okay, and strong and all these things, I wouldn't be happy tomorrow. And that's just the truth. Like,
no, I appreciate that.
I have a lot of things that I'm working on right now, and a lot of changes in my life, and I'm definitely not where I thought I was going to be 10 years ago.
And that's okay.
It's okay.
And
that's okay. So this idea that just because we change our body, or just because we have the hair that we want to look like, or buy the clothes or the car or whatever, that we're going to find happiness is that's just a long shot from where the truth is. I think we really have to learn how to believe in ourselves and find peace and happiness with our souls. Much, much more than with whatever we have going on the outside.
And surround ourselves with people who accept us as who we are, and that's a hard road to travel to in life, to find those people that will just be like, I just love you, right? I mean, I just love you. So whatever whatever path you take in life, I love you, and sometimes those kind of people are really hard to find, but once you find them, they are true gems,
they are.
And so, because you have a really good community around you that love you, and we think that you are bomb already, you know what I mean? So, and as we travel through life, we shift, things transition. It's just how it is. And when you are I think a whole human, right? You change, and you discover new things about yourself. So there's no negative in that. My concern for all people is, that self-love, right?
Yeah.
And finding that inner peace of, listen, I'm traveling through life. And as we travel through life, things evolve, right?
Yeah.
Things change, they shift. So if you were to tell someone else that is kind of going the path that you're going in regards to self-discovery, what would you tell them? What would your advice be? They were younger, or kind of having some of the questions that you've already kind of traveled through.
Mm-hmm.
What would you tell them? What kind of advice would you give?
I would say to breathe.
Yeah, yeah,
To take some time and just breathe. That it doesn't have to all be figured out right now. That if what you can do is a small thing to be closer to who you are, then do that thing.
yeah.
So
Well, do that thing.
do that thing.
Do that thing. I appreciate your time today. I always have tons of questions. I mean, I think that you hit the nail on the head when you said there is a lot of complexities to this conversation, right? Because I think for a lot of people, it's a new conversation,
Yeah.
right? And, I mean, I know for myself, I try to respect people where they are, right? Yeah. So I want to understand,
Yeah.
so that I am not being offensive or downright just, inconsiderate. So I appreciate you for being honest today, transparent, and also having this conversation with me, allowing me to ask a few questions,
for sure.
To understand things a little bit clearer. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. I don't speak for everybody, but I can speak to my experience. And I just hope that we can all come to the table and have a conversation, and because everyone's story is different.
Yeah, I would really love to do a panel eventually about some of these topics, right? Because in a space where people feel comfortable and nobody's going to attack, that has to be the understanding coming in on either side of it, right?
Yes,
because sure. I will say this, just being totally transparent, I found that some people within the community is not as open to conversation. And I don't know if it's because people have become so accustomed to being defensive that if somebody asks a question, it's like this defense. And I'm saying, whoa, I'm not coming to attack. I really do want to understand, because how do you speak up for something if you don't understand it, right? How do you do that? Yeah. If you can't ask questions, like I said, growing up, I literally did not talk about that. Yeah. Like you just didn't talk about it. For sure. You know what I mean? So it's like now you have people that you literally can know one day as she, right? The next day you call them they, right? It takes time to adjust to that, especially with the English language being, they being plural, but you see one person. So you have to understand that, the non-binary, that was all new stuff for me, so I just hope that we can sit down and talk where people can be receptive on both ends of it, so we can come to a better understanding and connectivity.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's always room for growth.
Yes.
And I learned very early that nobody is really trying to be a jerk. Yeah. People make mistakes, and we have to be okay that they make mistakes regardless of what kind of mistake it is. And I've never really met anyone who's trying to
just be
nasty. People are genuinely, they just don't know.
They don't know. And you have to understand, just like you mentioned earlier about that fear, right? You didn't understand it, so you had this fear attached to it.
For sure.
People have the same fear on the other side of things, right? It is a fear, and wherever that fear comes from, we can't say, I don't know why everybody has these different fears and where they stem from, but there is a fear. And like I said, for myself growing up, where it literally was beat into I shouldn't say literally, but well, sometimes, I mean, I grew up backwards, so it might have been, but when the conversation is really, drilled into your head that like fire is waiting for you
Yeah.
for all eternity,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
When that is drilled into your head, you don't want any parts of that.
Yeah.
Right? But, you know, I did other things that could have sent me to some fiery hell.
Right,
you know what I mean?
right.
So it was like, but yeah, it is a fear sometimes. And I guess that's a good word to use when we don't know things, right?
Yeah.
We fear it. And it's
definitely.
a natural thing, I think. So the bravery comes through these conversations on both sides with people saying, listen, let's talk about this.
Yeah.
Help me understand, because you can't just throw people away.
You can't.
No, can't throw people away. Well, thank you, Jazz. I appreciate you. Again, thanks for having this conversation. Thanks for being open. Thanks for all you do in the community, especially with children, to help them, you know, feel seen. I really appreciate that. I appreciate that in you and what you do at Live Oak, which is one of my favorite places people know. You know, somebody told me the other day, they said, I follow your page, but I didn't know you liked Live Oak. And I'm like,
follow my page.
One of these aren't true. One of these things are not true, because come on now. No, we laughed about that, but I did call them out. I said, no, wait a minute now. Some day true. No, thank you. I appreciate you. We're going to do a part. We're going to have more. We're going to keep this conversation going. Yeah, so, definitely. All right. Awesome.
Come break bread with me. Break bread and be free. Come break bread with me. Conversationally. Open your mind. Now is the time. Open your heart, and the healing can start. Come break bread with me. Break bread and be free. Knowledge and joy, love and peace. Come break bread with me. Come set your mind free. Come break bread with me. Have a conversation with me. Come break bread.